11 years ago, our four founders conceived of a free people under God and not under big government. Our founders created a central government that was profoundly limited in scope, with only a few enumerated powers, whose primary function was to serve and protect its citizens from foreign enemies and state coercion and corruption. As students of history, our founders were profound students of history. They looked down the corridors of history and they concluded that the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. Of course, Thomas Jefferson understood that the government that governs best governs least. Now, understand something. The founders were not anarchists. Anarchists who foolishly believe that man can live without government, but they understood that government was at best a necessary evil and at worst an intolerable one. The genius of our founders was their brilliant understanding of human nature. As the father of our forgotten and abused Constitution, James Madison has stated, "What is government itself but the greatest reflection on human nature? If men were angels, no government would be necessary." Now, our founders also understood, as reflected in the words of Harry S. Truman's 1949 inaugural address. He said, "We believe that all men are created equal because they're created in the image of God Almighty." Harry, the buck stops here, Truman spoke those words in responding to communism, to atheism of 1949. Truman knew that man was not made in the image of the state, and that man was not to be its slave. Our founders saw man as sublimely and wonderfully made in God's image, with great potential to do good in this world, but they also understood that man was flawed, sinful, and fallen, and therefore he needed to be watched vigilantly, so as not to violate the God-given rights of his fellow man. Thus, our founders understood the age-old danger of too much power given in the hand of government rulers. Our founders were instructed in classic political theory, classic political literature, from Cicero to John Locke to William Blackstone and to the scriptures. They brilliantly designed a government that was deliberately small, with checks and balances and a division of the branches of government as a stopgap of preventing too much government in the hands of one person or one branch of government. Our founders created a rule book that was intended to have enough government to protect us, but not too much government to hurt us. You guys are awake. This is good. This is good. It's sad to say today, but we have drifted far, far away from our founders' small government constitution. A government that used to be large enough to protect and yet small enough for us to be free to pursue life and all that it can bring before us. Our founders despised statism. What is statism? Statism is the arrogant belief that the state and its bureaucrats and its money-sucking, spending, and taxing eternal politicians think they know what's best for us. They don't. They never did, and they never will. Throughout history, statism has been the enemy of freedom-loving people around the world. Whether it's the statism of National Socialism, Soviet Socialism, Castro Socialism, Mao Socialism, Bill Ayers, Bernardine Dohrn, whether underground socialism or the all-too-popular progressive socialism, liberty-loving Americans instinctively despise all forms of state socialism that takes and steals from the producers, the hard-working American people, and gives to the non-producers and Washington politicians, perpetuating their power and creating lazy working, non-working class that grows ever so bold, demanding that they are entitled to other people's money, other people's property, and their day of labor. Leave us alone, Washington, D.C. Go home, Washington, D.C. Take your long, pernicious taxing and spending hands off our necks and out of our wallets. We, the American people, know what's best for our homes and our families and our communities and our state, not Uncle Sam. Go home and let us be free. Government is no longer contained behind the walls of the Constitution. Washington's big government roams where it pleases, through every walk of life and through every department of business, from workers to wages to materials to products, from cradle to grave. As Washington, D.C. grows, our liberties shrink. We are no longer a government of laws. We become a sugar daddy nanny state with millions of roving, all-powerful agents whose primary concern is their welfare and their pocketbooks and not the welfare of we the people. It was the big state fascist socialist, and don't let people fool you that the fascists weren't socialists. They were. What your professors have taught you in college is way off. It's not a coincidence the Nazis were called National Socialists. Benito Mussolini always proclaimed in his speeches, tutto nello Stato, nulla contro lo Stato. Everything in the state, nothing against the state. America has turned from an authentic, well-functioning republic under God to a growing, progressive welfare state that worships itself and its anointed ones. It was John Fitzgerald Kennedy, in defiance of Soviet socialism, who stated in his wonderful 1961 inaugural address, "The rights of man come not from the state, but from the hand of God Almighty." God bless America. And let it always be remembered that the history of liberty is the limitation of government power, not its increase. My fellow Americans, my fellow lovers of life, liberty, property, limited government, and this republic under God, let today not just be about hearing a bunch of speeches. This isn't just about giving speeches and us gathering together. We have the right to assemble. Now is not the time to be a sideline patriot. Now is not the time to be indifferent to the growing monstrosity of government spending and taxing that is destroying this land of liberty. Now is the time to spread the word of our founders' vision of a small government, reasonable taxation, and constrained spending. Now is the time to educate yourself on this nation's greatness. Now is the time to tell your neighbors and your relatives, your loved ones, of your love of this country and its exceptional place in world history. I am wearing my father's World War II dog take next to my heart. He fought against the Japanese Imperial Empire. And I wear his dog take near to my heart because as a kid he told me stories of what he did and what it was involved to fight and sacrifice for freedom and how he loved this country. So I decided to become a history teacher and had the privilege to teach people like Ethan and others that are out in the crowd. This nation is the most beautiful nation in the history of the world, and it's the most beautiful republic in the history of the world. That's why I love the founders. We're losing that vision. We're losing that reality. So now is the time, people. I will never, ever apologize for this nation. We're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I will not apologize for this nation. Now is the time to get the vote out in November and elect men and women who talk our founders' talk, and more importantly, truly walk our founders' walk.